Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome everyone to the deep dive.
Hey there.
So today, we're diving into some, well, really practical source material. It's all about helping you sound more confident, more natural when you're expressing yourself in English.
Yeah, things like sharing your thoughts, agreeing with people, or, handling those times when you maybe see things differently.
Exactly. And the source material really kind of zeroes in on something a lot of learners find tricky, right?
For sure. I mean, you can have really solid grammar, maybe a good vocabulary, but then when it comes to actually saying what you think,
Hmm.
it feels a bit, I don't know, limited.
Yeah, limited. Or you just keep falling back on the same simple phrases, like saying, I think, all the time.
Or just a flat, I agree.
Right. And look, those phrases work, they get the job done, basically.
Yeah, they're functional.
But this source material points out, and it's so true, that real conversations, like proper dynamic chats,
Whether it's just with friends or maybe in a meeting at work or even a debate.
they need a bit more. More variety, more color, more confidence. They need to sound like you.
Exactly. It's not just about being grammatically correct. The real goal here is getting that fluency of expression, sounding natural, feeling comfortable doing it.
So this source is kind of a bridge then, moving from just functional English to something more engaging, personal.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah.
bridging that gap.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is basically to pull apart this resource. We'll dig out the key strategies, the specific phrases it recommends.
And hopefully build up a really practical toolkit for you.
Yeah, so by the end, you'll feel hopefully more equipped to just jump into those conversations, share what you think, and sound more like the fluent speaker you're, becoming.
We're going to hit the main areas the source covers. First up, how to actually give your opinion, but moving beyond just, I think.
Right, giving it more weight or nuance.
Second, how to agree with someone, but make it sound, natural and positive. Keep the flow going.
Okay. And third, disagreement.
Yeah, but the polite kind. How to disagree respectfully. Which is, let's face it, a super important skill.
Oh, absolutely. And then the fourth thing.
That's about adding a bit of sparkle,
Hmm.
personality, making your opinions actually engaging, making people want to listen.
Making them interesting. Okay, go.
So the overall goal is really just to empower you, give you the tools, the phrases, the techniques.
So that joining in English discussions feels, well, not just possible, but actually comfortable
Hmm.
and effective.
Think of it like adding more colors to your painting palette. You're not just stuck with blue anymore.
Nice analogy. Okay, let's do it. Let's jump straight into that first big area from the source, giving your opinion with more confidence and variety.
Right. So the source makes a really good point about, I think it's fine. Obviously, everyone uses it.
It's like the default setting.
Totally.
Yeah.
But relying only on it, that can sometimes make you sound a bit,
Yeah.
well, repetitive for one.
Yeah, you hear yourself saying it over and over.
But maybe less certain than you actually feel.
Yeah.
Or just, not quite as sophisticated as you could sound.
Because native speakers, they mix it up, right? They use a whole range of phrases.
Exactly. And exploring those alternatives, that's what adds variety. And variety is a big part of sounding fluent and confident.
It's like having different ways to open a door, maybe, I think is the basic handle, but sometimes you need a different key or a different approach depending on the room you're entering.
Yeah, that works. The source gives us several really good alternatives too, I think.
Okay, what have we got?
Things like, in my opinion, or personally, I believe, also from my perspective,
Yeah.
and I say that. And finally, as far as I'm concerned,
Right. Quite a few options there, and they probably all feel slightly different.
they do. They all introduce your opinion, yeah, but with slightly different shades of meaning, or maybe formality levels.
Okay, let's really dig into these one by one. The source gives an example for the first one, in my opinion.
Yeah, it says, in my opinion, learning a new language is one of the best ways to expand your thinking.
Okay, that sounds pretty clear, quite direct. States a belief firmly.
It is, in my opinion. It's like a very standard, straightforward way to signal, this is my view.
It flags it clearly as subjective. This comes from me.
Right. And it's pretty versatile, too.
Yeah.
You could use it in, say, a work email, but also just chatting with friends. Reasonably formal, but also okay casually.
Okay, let's try and make up some more examples just to get a feel for it. What if we're talking about climate change?
Okay. You could say, in my opinion, individual actions are important, but we need systemic change led by governments.
Yeah, that works.
Huh.
Or maybe talking about city planning. In my opinion, investing more in public transport is crucial for reducing traffic congestion.
Good one. Or even something simpler, like movies. In my opinion, the sequel wasn't nearly as good as the original film.
Right, or books. In my opinion, reading the book before watching the movie adaptation is always better.
Huh. Usually true. Or how about technology? In my opinion, ethical considerations are lagging behind AI development.
Ooh, topical. So yeah, in my opinion, feels like a solid, reliable choice for just clearly stating your viewpoint.
Definitely. It sets the stage. Here goes my take on this.
Okay, next one from the list was personally, I believe. Now that word personally seems important here.
It really is. Adding personally puts the emphasis squarely on you, the individual.
It makes it sound more like your specific feeling or conviction.
Exactly. It often suggests something you feel quite strongly about, or maybe something based on your own experience, not just like an objective fact.
And I believe generally sounds stronger than I think, right? I think can be a bit hesitant.
I believe definitely carries more conviction, more certainty. Yeah.
The source example captures that. Personally, I believe remote work is fantastic because it gives people more flexibility. You can almost hear the speaker's own positive experience behind that.
Yeah, it feels like a core belief for them, not just a passing thought.
Let's try some more. How about parenting styles?
Okay. Personally, I believe consistency is key when raising children, even if it's difficult sometimes. That sounds like a deeply held principle.
Yeah, it does. Or maybe about career choices.
Mhm.
Personally, I believe finding work that aligns with your values is more important than just chasing a high salary.
That has real weight. Or even something lighter, like hobbies. Personally, I believe everyone should have a creative outlet, whatever it might be.
You can hear the conviction. What about food preferences? Personally, I believe pineapple does belong on pizza, despite the controversy.
Huh. Controversial indeed. But using personally, I believe, frames it as your strong individual stance. It gives you permission to hold that view, even if others disagree.
Right. It highlights, this is my truth. Okay, moving on. The source also mentioned, from my perspective, how does that one change the feeling?
From my perspective, is interesting. It explicitly acknowledges that you're offering one viewpoint.
Ah, so it implies there might be other ways to look at it.
Exactly. It frames your opinion as coming from your specific vantage point,
Mm-hmm.
based on your background, your role, your experience. It subtly suggests other perspectives are also valid.
So it's less about this is the absolute truth and more from where I'm standing, this is what I see.
Precisely. The source didn't give a specific example for this one, but it's easy enough to create some.
Let's try. What if we're discussing a team project that's facing delays?
Okay. You could say, from my perspective, the main holdup seems to be getting clear requirements defined up front.
Yeah, that pinpoints the issue based on how you're seeing the process unfold, or maybe debating different solutions to a community problem.
From my perspective, focusing on preventative measures would be more effective in the long run than just reacting to crises.
That frames it as your strategic viewpoint? How about a more personal example, maybe choosing where to live?
From my perspective, the benefits of living in a smaller town outweigh the lack of big city amenities. It acknowledges others might value those amenities differently.
Right, or interpreting a piece of news. From my perspective, the media coverage has been focusing too much on one aspect of the story. You're highlighting your interpretation of the coverage.
So, from my perspective, is really useful for showing awareness that yours is one viewpoint among potential many.
Yeah.
It sounds quite considered.
Okay, next one from the source list. I'd say that this one feels, I don't know, much more calm and more conversational.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd say that is supernatural. It's maybe a bit softer, more casual than, in my opinion.
Like you're offering your thought, but not making a huge deal out of it.
Yeah, like an observation or maybe an estimation. Doesn't sound too heavy or definitive. Really flexible for just everyday chat.
The source uses, I'd say, later on, but let's make a standalone example, talking about a recent change at work.
I'd say that the new software is actually saving us a lot of time. Simple, direct opinion, offered casually.
Or discussing plans for the weekend. I'd say that Saturday looks like better weather for a hike than Sunday.
Yeah, offering your assessment. Or commenting on a meal. I'd say that this needs a little more salt.
Giving feedback gently. Or maybe about a movie character. I'd say that her motivations weren't entirely believable in the third act.
It's just a really smooth, easy way to slide your opinion into the conversation. Very common.
Okay, great. And the last one on the list was, as far as I'm concerned, this one sounds like it has a slightly stronger, maybe more specific flavor.
It does, yeah, as far as I'm concerned. Often implies that you're basing your opinion on what you think is important or within the scope of what matters to you.
So It can sometimes hint that other factors might exist or other people might disagree, but for your priorities, this is the bottom line.
That's a good way to put it. It can sometimes maybe sound a little dismissive of other viewpoints if you're not careful, but not necessarily impolite. It's about stating your specific criteria or focus.
The source example hints at this. As far as I'm concerned, it's a great option, but it depends on the person's job and lifestyle. See, they state their positive view, but immediately qualify it, showing it's from their angle.
Right, they're defining the scope of their concern. Let's try some more. Talking about evaluating an employee's performance.
Okay. As far as I'm concerned, their collaborative spirit is more valuable than their individual output numbers. You're stating your priority collaboration over numbers.
Or discussing environmental policies. As far as I'm concerned, protecting biodiversity should be the absolute top priority, whatever the economic cost. Again, stating a clear priority.
It can be simpler, too. Maybe choosing a restaurant.
Hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, any place with good reviews online is worth trying. That's your simple criterion.
Or personal preference again. As far as I'm concerned, working from home beats commuting any day of the week. That's your personal bottom line based on your values.
So, looking back at all these, in my opinion, personally, I believe, from my perspective, I'd say that. And as far as I'm concerned, it's like a whole spectrum, isn't it?
Absolutely. They're not just clones of I think. They let you fine-tune how you present your thoughts.
Yeah, you can choose to be more formal or casual, really emphasize your personal conviction, signal that it's just one viewpoint,
To offer it as a casual observation, or really nail down what matters most to you.
and getting comfortable using these different options, it doesn't just make you sound more varied and natural.
It actually helps you feel more confident too, right? Because you have the right tool for the job. You can express exactly the shade of meaning you want. It shows real command.
It really does, moving beyond just functional to like finessed communication.
So the advice is, next time you're about to say, I think, just pause for a tiny second. Ask yourself, does one of these other phrases maybe fit better here? What nuance do I want?
It takes a bit of conscious effort at first, I guess.
For sure. But like anything, you practice and it starts to become automatic. You just get the hang of it.
Okay, fantastic. That gives us a much richer toolkit for sharing our viewpoint. But conversations are not just monologues, right? What about responding to others?
Crucial point. What happens when someone else shares their idea and you agree?
The source tackles this too, doesn't it? Saying more than just, I agree.
Yeah, because while I agree is perfectly correct, grammatically, it can sometimes sound a bit, well, abrupt or just less engaging.
Like you're just ticking a box instead of really connecting with their point.
Exactly. The source notes that native speakers rarely just say, I agree, and stop there. They usually add something more.
Like what?
They might show how much they agree or why they agree. They add a little extra flavor.
Right. It's about validating the other person, keeping that conversational ball rolling.
Precisely. And the source gives us some great phrases for doing this politely and naturally.
Okay, what are they?
Things like, I completely agree with you. Or, that's a great point. Also, I couldn't agree more. And you're absolutely right. And one more. Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Okay, another good list. Let's break them down. I completely agree with you. That sounds pretty strong.
It is. It's clear, unambiguous, leaves no doubt you're 100% on board with what they said.
No room for misinterpretation there.
The source actually gives a neat combined example for a couple of these. Imagine someone says, exercise is really important for mental health.
Okay, common observation.
Instead of just, I agree, the source suggests replies like, you're absolutely right. Exercise helps reduce stress and keeps you energized.
Ah, I see. You agree strongly. You're absolutely right. And then add why or how.
Exactly. Or another option given was, that's a great point. I always feel better after a workout.
Same pattern there. Agree. That's a great point. And add a personal validation or experience.
That's the key takeaway from the source here. The natural way to agree often involves adding that little bit extra. It shows you're engaged, you've processed what they said.
Let's try making more examples like that. Say someone remarks, this city really needs more green spaces.
You could say, I completely agree with you. Having parks nearby makes such a difference to quality of life. Agree, then add the benefit.
Or if they say, learning a musical instrument is incredibly rewarding but takes patience.
You could reply, you're absolutely right. The frustration is real sometimes, but sticking with it pays off. Agree. Acknowledge the nuance and reinforce the reward.
How about, that's a great point. The source example used it well. It seems to specifically praise the idea itself.
It does. It validates the quality of their contribution. You're saying, that insight you just shared, that's valuable.
So if someone analyzing a situation says, I think the communication breakdown started when the teams merged.
You could respond, that's a great point. I hadn't connected it directly to the merger before, but it makes perfect sense. Acknowledge the insight and agree.
Or maybe in a more casual setting, discussing a movie plot hole. That's a great point. I totally missed that inconsistency while watching.
Yeah, it validates their observation. Okay, what about, I couldn't agree more?
Right.
That sounds like the strongest one.
It really is. It means your agreement is absolute, like 110%. It's impossible to agree more.
So you use this when you feel really, really strongly aligned with what they said.
Right. If someone passionately argues access to quality education should be a universal right, no exceptions.
You could come back with, I couldn't agree more. It's the foundation for everything else in society. Expresses maximum agreement and adds significance.
Or a more everyday example, someone complains, trying to find parking downtown is a nightmare.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I spent 20 minutes circling last Tuesday. It's awful. Strong agreement plus shared experience.
Okay. And the last one, exactly. That's what I was thinking. What's special about this one?
This one's lovely. It adds that layer of connection. It's not just agreement. It's like shared minds.
Like you were both on the same track.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly. On its own is a strong agreement word. Adding, that's what I was thinking, makes it personal. It says, hey, we reached the same conclusion. It builds rapport.
So if someone suggests, maybe we should try presenting the data visually instead of just using text.
You could say, exactly. That's what I was thinking. A few charts would make this much clearer. Validates their idea and confirms you had a similar thought.
Or tasting food together. This curry could use a bit more spice, maybe.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's good, but just needs a little kick. Perfect for those shared sensory moments.
Wow, okay. So these agreement phrases are way more dynamic than just, I agree.
Totally.
Yeah.
They let you show the intensity of your agreement, validate the other person, show you're actively listening.
And often add that little bit extra that keeps the conversation flowing smoothly and positively.
It makes you sound like an active participant, building connection, not just a passive listener. It makes the whole exchange feel more genuine.
Definitely richer, more connected. Okay, but life isn't always agreement, is it?
No, definitely not. And the source tackles this head on. Sometimes you just have a different opinion.
And knowing how to say that without causing offense or shutting things down, that's crucial.
Absolutely critical. Disagreement is normal. It's healthy. It's how ideas get tested and refined. But how you do it makes all the difference.
Yeah, just blurting out, I disagree, or you're wrong, can feel really confrontational.
Puts people on the defensive immediately. Kills the conversation sometimes.
So the source offers better strategies. Polite disagreement.
Exactly. And the core idea, the main strategy the source emphasizes, is really smart. Acknowledge the other person's point first.
Before you state your own differing view.
Precisely. That little step makes a huge difference. It shows you've heard them, you've understood them.
Yeah.
Even if you don't end up agreeing, it softens the whole thing.
It's respectful.
Super respectful. So the phrases suggested follow this pattern. Things like, I see your point, but.
Okay.
Or, I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. Also, that's an interesting perspective, but I think.
Right.
Then there's, I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. And finally, I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently.
Okay, they all seem to have that acknowledge first, then pivot structure. Let's look at the first one. I see your point, but...
The source gives a good example for this about social media. Someone says, I think social media is bad for society.
Okay, a common viewpoint. A blunt response would be, no, it isn't.
Right. But the source suggests, I see your point, but I think social media has some benefits too, like keeping people connected.
Ah, okay. I see your point. Validates their concern as understandable. Then but signals the shift, and you offer the counter-argument or nuance.
Exactly. You're saying, I understand the basis for your view, however. Let's try another one. Someone argues, working from home permanently reduces team cohesion.
Okay, you could respond, I see your point. Maintaining team spirit can be a challenge remotely. But I think with intentional effort on virtual social events and clear communication, cohesion can actually be strengthened.
Nice. Acknowledge the challenge, can be a challenge, then offer a different outcome with conditions, but with intentional effort.
Or talking about a book, maybe. I see your point that the ending felt a bit abrupt, but I think it fit the overall ambiguous tone the author was going for.
Yeah. Acknowledge their feeling abrupt, but offer a different interpretation. But I think it fit. Right, so next phrase. I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. How's this different from I see your point?
I get what you're saying. Feels like it focuses more on understanding their overall message or argument, maybe.
Yeah, maybe slightly broader than just a single point. But I feel differently. That sounds more subjective, maybe based on emotion or personal values.
Could be. Like, maybe your disagreement isn't purely logical, but more about a gut feeling or a different priority.
Let's test that. Someone insists you absolutely must reply to work emails within an hour to be seen as professional.
Okay, you could say, I get what you're saying about responsiveness being valued, but I feel differently. I think setting clear boundaries and focusing on deep work is more crucial for my role's effectiveness.
Yeah, you understand their value, responsiveness, but counter with your feeling about boundaries and deep work being more important for you.
Or maybe discussing investment strategies. I get what you're saying about the potential for high returns with that risky stock, but I feel differently. I'm more comfortable with a slower, steadier growth approach.
Understand the logic, high returns,
Yeah.
but opt out based on personal feeling, comfort level.
Yeah, that works. Okay, the source also listed, that's an interesting perspective, but I think, what's the vibe here?
That's an interesting perspective. That sounds quite polite, thoughtful, especially maybe if their idea is genuinely new to you or a bit unusual.
Calling it interesting validates it as worth considering, even if you don't agree.
Exactly. It shows intellectual respect before you pivot with, but I think.
The source example was also social media. That's an interesting perspective, but I actually think it depends on how people use it. Acknowledges their view, then adds nuance.
Let's try another. If someone proposes a really unconventional solution to a marketing problem.
That's an interesting perspective, trying a completely guerrilla marketing tactic. But I think for a brand image, a more traditional approach might be safer right now. Compliments the novelty, then politely disagrees based on risk brand.
Or interpreting a historical event. That's an interesting perspective on why the treaty failed, focusing on individual personalities. But I think the underlying economic factors were probably more decisive. Acknowledges their focus, offers an alternative interpretation.
Okay, useful for more complex discussions, maybe. Then there was, I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. This one seems very direct about the respect part.
It really is. It explicitly puts respect for them and their right to an opinion right up front. Very good for sensitive topics, maybe political or ethical debates, where feelings can run high.
You're separating the person from the idea. The source example was simple. I respect your opinion, but I feel differently about that.
Let's make it more specific. Discussing, say, city development plans that are controversial.
I respect your opinion that the new development will bring needed jobs, but I have a different view. I'm more concerned about the environmental impact on the nearby park. States respect, then clearly outlines the differing concern.
Or about different learning styles.
Yeah.
I respect your opinion that lectures are the most efficient way to deliver information, but I have a different view. I believe interactive workshops lead to better long-term retention. Respects their preference, states your alternative belief.
Okay. And the last one was, I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently. How does where you're coming from differ from what you're saying?
I get where you're coming from feels like it goes a bit deeper. It implies understanding their background, their reasoning, their motivations for holding that view. It adds a layer of empathy.
Ah, so you're acknowledging the source of their opinion, not just the opinion itself.
I think so, yeah. Like, if someone explains a decision based on a past negative experience, I get where you're coming from. After what happened last year, I totally understand why you'd be hesitant. But I see it differently this time. The market conditions have changed significantly.
Yeah, validates their past experience as a reason, but argues the present is different, or maybe different management styles.
I get where you're coming from with wanting to give the team complete autonomy, but I see it differently. I think providing a bit more structure initially might help them get up to speed faster. Understands their philosophy, autonomy, but offers a different approach based on efficiency.
These polite disagreement phrases are like conversational gold, aren't they?
They really are. They let you add your voice, share your different perspective, without shutting down the conversation or making it awkward.
Keeps the door open for discussion, shows maturity.
Turns potential conflict into just a comparison of viewpoints. Much healthier, much more productive.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got tools for giving opinions, agreeing naturally, disagreeing politely. What's the final piece from the source, making it engaging?
Exactly. Adding that layer of personality and natural flow. Because just stating opinions, even politely, can still be a little dry sometimes.
Yeah, like you're just reading points off a list.
Right. And native speakers, they naturally add little flourishes, introductory phrases, maybe a bit of emotion, some humor, things that make it sound more relatable, more interesting.
And the source highlights two main ways to do this.
Yeah. Using natural introductory expressions and adding emotion or humor.
Okay, let's look at those intro expressions first. The source mentioned, honestly, I think. To be fair, I'd say. And if you ask me,
Right. Honestly, I think. What does that add?
sincerity, like you're sharing your genuine, maybe even slightly unfiltered thought.
Exactly. It signals, here's my true feeling on this. The source example is simple. Honestly, I think learning English is one of the best investments in yourself. Hearing honestly just gives it that ring of truth, of earnestness.
Let's try more. Giving feedback on a presentation.
Honestly, I think the content was excellent, but maybe the slides could have been a bit more visual. Sounds like sincere, constructive feedback.
Or talking about a difficult decision. Honestly, I think we made the right call, even though it wasn't easy. Conveys genuine belief.
Or even just expressing enjoyment. Honestly, I think this is the most fun I've had all week. Sounds truly heartfelt.
Okay, honestly, add sincerity. What about, to be fair, I'd say.
To be fair,
Yeah.
it was interesting. It's often used to, like, balance the conversation. Maybe someone just made a strong negative point, and you want to offer a counterpoint or a mitigating factor.
So it adds balance or nuance, acknowledges the other side.
Yeah. Or offers a concession.
Yeah.
It suggests you're trying to be objective. Like if someone says, this project is taking forever.
You could reply, to be fair, I'd say the scope did increase quite a bit halfway through. You're not denying it's slow, but you're adding context, to be fair.
Or someone criticizes a movie harshly. That plot made no sense.
To be fair, I'd say the visuals were absolutely stunning, even if the story was confusing. Balancing criticism with a positive point.
Or defending someone slightly. He seemed really unprepared for the meeting.
To be fair, I'd say he probably had 3 other urgent deadlines land on him this morning, offering a possible fair reason.
So, to be fair, adds that element of balance. And the last intro, if you ask me, this sounds super casual.
Totally informal, like you're just throwing your opinion into the mix, offering your 2 cents.
Yeah, it implies, well, since we're talking about it, or here's my personal take, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Very low-key.
The source example was classic. If you ask me, coffee is better than tea any day. Just a simple preference stated casually.
Let's try more. Giving advice about commuting.
If you ask me, taking the train is way less stressful than driving during rush hour. Sharing your personal experience preference.
Or about organizing your workspace. If you asked me, a clear desk helps clear your mind. Your personal productivity tip.
Or even commenting on a social trend. If you ask me, people spend way too much time scrolling on their phones. Just your casual observation.
These little intros, honestly, to be fair, if you ask me, they're like conversational grease. They make things flow more smoothly.
Yeah, they prepare the listener, add a bit of tone, make it sound less like a statement and more like part of a real conversation.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into the other way. The source suggests adding engagement, injecting emotion or humor. This is where you can really let your personality show.
Oh, I remember the source examples for this were great.
They were. The first one, about the classic pizza debate.
I'd say pineapple on pizza is a crime, but that's just me.
Fantastic, right? It uses, I'd say, which is casual, but then hits you with strong, exaggerated language, a crime,
Right.
which is obviously humorous.
And then softens it immediately with, but that's just me, showing it's a lighthearted personal take.
It's funny, it's relatable, it's memorable, way more engaging than just saying, I don't like pineapple on pizza.
Totally. Let's try making some more like that. What about messy roommates?
Okay, honestly, I think my roommate's definition of clean involves shoving everything under the bed. It's an art form, really. Using humor and slight exaggeration.
Or about early morning meetings. If you ask me, scheduling a meeting before 9 a.m. should require hazard pay, hyperbole for comedic effect.
The other source example used strong emotion. Honestly, I'd rather wake up at 5 a.m. than sit in traffic for 2 hours.
So relatable. You instantly feel their hatred of traffic because of the strong comparison to something else unpleasant.
It conveys the intensity of feeling very effectively. Let's try that pattern. Talk about a really bad movie.
Honestly, I'd rather watch infomercials for 3 hours straight than sit through that film again. Strong comparison to express extreme boredom dislike.
Or about doing taxes. To be fair, I'd say I find quantum physics slightly less confusing than filling out these tax forms, using humor and exaggeration to express difficulty. These examples really show how adding that touch of emotion or exaggeration or humor or a relatable comparison, it just lifts your opinion.
Makes it more than just information. It makes it human, expressive, engaging.
It shows how you feel, not just what you think. And that is key to sounding natural and connecting with people.
Wow. Okay, so that really covers the whole spectrum from the source, doesn't it? Giving opinions, agreeing, disagreeing, and making it all sound engaging.
It's a really solid framework, moving beyond the basics into more nuanced, confident, and natural expression.
So just to recap the big takeaways for everyone listening.
First, definitely expand your phrasebook beyond just, I think. Use things like, in my opinion, personally, I believe, from my perspective, I'd say, as far as I'm concerned, choose the one that fits the nuance.
Second, when you agree, make it active. Go beyond I agree. Use I completely agree. That's a great point. I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right. Exactly. And try to add a little reason or personal touch.
Third, handle disagreements politely. Remember the golden rule. Acknowledge their point first. Use phrases like, I see your point, but that's an interesting perspective, but I respect your opinion, but soften the landing.
And fourth, sprinkle in those natural touches. Use introductory phrases like, honestly, to be fair, if you ask me. And don't be afraid to add a bit of your personality through emotion or humor.
Nail those 4 areas, practice them, and you will absolutely sound more natural, more fluent, and feel way more confident in English conversations.
These are the tools for really effective, engaging communication.
And importantly, the source doesn't just throw this information at you, it gives you homework, a practical challenge.
Right, because just knowing isn't enough. You got to do it. What's the challenge?
Okay, it's 3 steps. Step 1, find a conversation. Any conversation where you can express an opinion. Could be about anything, work, hobbies, news, weekend plans.
Okay, find an opportunity. Step 2.
Step 2, in that conversation, consciously try to use at least one of the alternative opinion phrases we talked about. And if possible, use one of the agreement or disagreement phrases too. And maybe try one of the engaging techniques, an intro phrase or a touch of personality.
So actively try out the new tools.
Yeah.
And step 3.
Step 3, reflect afterwards. Just take a minute. How did it feel using those phrases? Did you feel more confident? Which one felt natural? Which one maybe felt awkward? What could you do better next time?
The reflection step. That's so important for locking in the learning.
Totally invaluable. It's
Yeah.
about self-awareness, figuring out what works for you. It's not about perfection, just about trying and learning.
Because that's how these phrases stop being things you memorize and start being part of your actual natural way of speaking English. Practice and reflection.
You got it. It might feel a bit clunky at first, totally normal, but stick with it and they'll start to flow.
Okay, great challenge. And the source also hinted at what comes next, right? Building on this.
Yeah, it sets up the next logical step. Storytelling in English.
That makes sense. Because conversations aren't just opinions back and forth. We share experiences, tell anecdotes.
Exactly. Explaining things that happen, recounting events. It's another massive part of natural, engaging communication. If you can confidently state your view, the next step is being able to illustrate it or share related experiences.
So being able to tell a good story is key for connection too.
Huge. The source note suggests the next deep dive would cover things like basic story structure, getting your past tenses right, and importantly, how to keep people actually listening and engaged when you tell a story.
Okay, looking forward to that. It feels like another vital piece of the fluency puzzle.
For sure. But for now, the focus is on mastering these opinion and discussion tools. And remember what the source implies throughout.
What's that?
Your opinion matters. Your perspective is valuable. In English, in any language.
Yeah. Learning how to articulate it clearly, confidently, respectfully. It's not just about passing an English test.
Not at all. It's about making sure your unique voice gets heard, understood, and contributes to the world around you.
It's empowering, really. Lets you participate more fully.
Connect with people on a much deeper level.
So, final thought then.
Yeah.
Maybe think about this. Now that you have these new tools, what conversations are you maybe looking forward to having? What opinions are you eager to share with a bit more confidence or flair?
Yeah, how might expressing yourself differently actually change your interactions? Learning these skills isn't just about language. It shapes how you navigate relationships and share who you are.
It's a powerful thought. So definitely take on that challenge from the source. Pick a phrase, try it out, see how it feels.
Keep practicing, keep talking,
Mm-hmm.
and try to enjoy the process of really finding and using your voice in English.
We'll see you next time for that deep dive into storytelling.